World Refugee Day is dedicated to raising awareness on refugees all over the world. According to UN High Commissioner for Refugees, Filippo Grand, this year it takes place against the backdrop of a dramatic global crisis. And not only are record numbers of people forced to flee their homes, but the world is grappling with COVID-19, a disease that is affecting all of us. The High Commissioner said that what started as a health crisis has expanded, and today many of the most vulnerable refugees and the displaced amongst them are facing a pandemic of poverty. Joining us to chat a little bit more about this day is UNHCR Regional Director for Southern Africa, Valentin Tapsoba. A very good morning to you, Valentin. Thank you for joining us on the AM edition of Newsfeed. I mean, looking at the very definitions issued by both the African Union Charter and even the United Nations, you know, to date, has it been inclusive enough to accommodate all persons? What is your take on the very definitions of what it is to be a refugee, an economic migrant, an asylum seeker, or an internally displaced persons?
Yes, thank you so much, Ms. Wilson, for having me. I just want to recall what World Refugee Day is. We celebrate World Refugee Day each year on the 20th of June to reflect on the fact that millions of families are living far from their home, leaving everything behind because of war, conflict, and persecution. So the number of refugees, the number of people who are looking for international protection at the end of 2019, December 2019, was 79.5 million people looking for international protection. As you could see, the number are not going down, but rather increasing exponentially. And it is very difficult for UNHCR to care for these people alone. This is why, for example, when you see in 2000, we have 40 million people. And in 2020, we have already 80 million people. So the number has doubled within a decade. And we are really looking for the international community, for everybody, the country of asylum, to really help UNHCR deal with this situation.
Valentin, I just want to revert back to my initial question about, you know, the different categories of persons. I mean, you've got refugees, asylum seekers, economic migrants, and even internally displaced persons. I mean, briefly, can you walk us through what the differences are between each category and perhaps how inclusive it is at large to the global crisis based on what the AU and UN Charter stipulates?
Yes, like I said, a refugee is somebody who is in his or her country of origin and has left his or country of origin to go to another country, to a third country, looking for safe haven, looking for safety. This is the first category that we are saying. It is a refugee. An asylum seeker is someone who has fled the country, arrived in a third country, and the government of that country is still saying, okay, we have to determine whether you are a refugee or you are a migrant or you are somebody else. This is somebody who is an asylum seeker. And then you have internally displaced person. An internally displaced person is someone who is still in her own country, but because of war. If you take, for example, the case of DRC next door, you have 5 million, Ms. Wilson, 5 million IDPs, internally displaced people. People who are, for example, in Ituri, in Bunia, moving because of the war, because of the non-state actors. They go to a village, they start fighting, they start raping women and children and so forth, and people have to flee for their life. But they did not cross a border. They did not, for example, cross into Zambia. They did not cross into Uganda. They did not cross to into Zimbabwe or South Africa, but they are still in DRC, in Congo, but not in their villages. They can move to like 20 kilometers, 50 kilometers, 100 kilometers. They are inside DRC. This is what we call internally displaced person. Then you have the another category that we say called statelessness. Stateless persons. Stateless persons are people who no one is saying that they have a nationality. When you ask them, they don't know. They cannot tell you their nationality. And as you know, if you don't have a nationality, you don't have an identity, you don't exist. This is clear. And this is why we as UNHCR, we are still trying to make sure that the statelessness people, we need to make sure that by 2024, we eradicate statelessness. We have been, the UN, the United Nations has given 10 years to eradicate statelessness. We have already done 5 years. The remaining is 5 years, 2024, and we need by 2024 to make sure that everybody living in this world has a nationality.
Valentin, I mean, as we know, every region has its own challenges and also strides that have been taken over the years based on the mandate and resources available. I just want to hone in on the situation regarding refugees and IDPs, etc. During COVID-19. I mean, we've seen the issuance of travel bans, the limited movements. I wanted to know how that has directly impacted them at large, even just basic access to resources.
Yes, thank you so much for this. Before, even if we are talking before COVID, it was very difficult for refugees to cope because refugees are within the category of vulnerability. Most of them are vulnerable. If we don't give them food assistance, shelter, water, and so forth, they cannot just cope. But with the COVID-19, the situation has even worsened. Those who are still coming, for example, looking for safe haven, looking for international protection, we have been really able to negotiate, to discuss, to advocate with the asylum countries like Malawi, like Zimbabwe or Zambia, to let them in. We know that borders are closed and so forth, but with international law, international refugee law, you cannot send somebody back to a place where it is unsafe. So the countries have understood that, and with the measures to make sure that these people coming in don't infect other people if they are already coronavirus positive. We have also, with the government, set up isolation centers so that when they come, we put them there, they are in quarantine, and then when after 14 days or more than that, if they don't have any sign of coronavirus, we can transfer them now to the camp or to the settlement.
I'm also just looking at, a particular focus in Southern Africa, which of course is the region you focus on. During COVID-19, I mean, upon receiving refugee status, there's also some benefits, including access to a bank account, amongst other benefits that come with that. I just wanted to know, in terms of what's been translating on the ground when permits expired, which is for about a period of 5 years, or bank accounts, had to be renewed. I mean, what did that look like during COVID-19? How were refugees assisted?
Yes, when we were able definitely to go ahead of the curve, to reach out to the banking association, for example, if I take South Africa, to write to them, to engage with them, to say, okay, you will have maybe refugees, their status or their cards, refugee card will expire within COVID. What do we do? So we were able to negotiate with them so that they can extend it and not close their accounts. And also the Ministry of Home Affairs is also with us, accepted to extend their stay, their papers, even if it has been expired right now up to 31st of July. So we are hoping that by that time, the situation will improve, and those who had their papers and so forth expired can go and renew them. Now, in terms of the lockdown, it is not only refugees, but also the population is really getting hit very hard. Because they can no longer have livelihood activities. They are just waiting to receive food parcels.
Tapsoba, unfortunately, I'm going to have to leave the conversation there. Regional Director for UNHCR Southern Africa, Valentin Tapsoba, just chatting to us about the significance of World Refugee, particularly during a time of COVID-19. But coming up next, Minister of Environment, Forestry and Fisheries, Barbara Creasy, talks to us about the youth's call for economic recovery from COVID-19 that is just green, inclusive and youth and gender responsive from her department in light of Youth Month.